An area from Kansas City out to here and up into Iowa and down as far as we'll let him go. Pretty large area that he covers, and he calls on Premier here and Chad, and he's our local salesman. So we've always got somebody close by to fuss at and pester if you need to, and so he's around, and certainly Chad's store here, we sell our seeds and our products through here. And I work, my name is John Carpenter. I'm from more than 50 miles away from here. You know what that means? I'm an expert. That's exactly right. And so tonight we're going to be talking about Pennington products, and specifically some clover. Pennington has been around since 1945 in the seed business, and we have handled seed and sold seed and grown seed, and we've gone so far as to now we develop certain types of seeds, and we work with universities to license certain seeds, and that's kind of some of the things I'm going to talk to you tonight. But I do want to thank Chad for having us here, and thank his business, and thank him for the business that he does with us, and those kind of things. Any of the things we talk about tonight can be bought here. And without holding up any more and giving the background, I'm going to talk to you about clover. There's a lot of good reasons to put clover in, but none more important than reducing cost. Anybody here interested in lowering their input cost? Nobody, I'm sure. But this clover is all about lowering our cost. And it's also not only about lowering your cost, it's also about increasing your production, okay? And so how many times in your life have you ever put less into something, less input, and gotten more out? Very few, I'm sure. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about that tonight, but some of the high spots we're going to hit on are going to cover. Well, we've got two clovers, Durana and Patriot, orange bag and blue bag. And so we're going to explain the differences in those two as we go, but they're both white perennial clovers, okay? They're both white perennial clovers. So how do clovers save money? The major things we're going to cover tonight is fertility and nitrogen fixation, improving animal performance, and protein supplement. But there's other ways that we can reduce cost as well on the farm with clovers, and we'll just touch on some of those. But first, let's hit on fertilizer. And the clover's not going to make phosphorus and potash, but it can make its own nitrogen. We're breathing 80% nitrogen right now. It's called atmospheric nitrogen. And the grass and the tree and the clover can't use that kind of atmospheric nitrogen. But we've inoculated this clover with a rhizobia bacteria. It's already pre-inoculated, ready to plant, and that rhizobia lives off of sugar. Okay, it gets that sugar from that clover plant. Well, a perfect symbiotic relationship has got to give something back, so that rhizobia can capture the atmospheric nitrogen that the clover does need, convert it chemically to an ammoniacal type nitrogen, and feed it to that clover plant. And so it works together. And the rhizobia is a hog. I mean, it loves sugar. And as long as it's getting sugar, it's feeding nitrogen. And so you can get as much as 150 pounds of nitrogen from that clover, fixing it in the field to feed to a nearby plant, such as a fescue plant or a native grass plant. And so whatever nitrogen costs today, you want to look at it, but roughly speaking, you know, at 70 cents or 80 cents or 40 cents or 70 cents, that's around $100, $105 to be exact. So that's a lot of money saved. Or if you say, well, I don't buy nitrogen, so I'm not really saving that money. Well, your grass benefit is around 150 pounds. So about every 50 pounds of N that you put down there, that's about a ton of yield in terms of grass yield. And so there's a lot of benefit from having that free nitrogen. And it's not all at once like it would be out of a fertilizer truck. It's a slow release system. This is a natural and organic type system, so it's a slow release system. So every day of the year you're getting a little spoonful of nitrogen into that system. Some of those days it's not a benefit. Whatever's happening today didn't really benefit you, but it'll come back to you later on because it didn't go anywhere. It's just left in the soil. Okay. I'm going to just demonstrate that here. This was on a Bermuda grass particular pasture. Bermuda grass is a nitrogen hog. It uses a whole lot of nitrogen in the system. If you can see any colors here, the red color is 30 pounds of N every application, 4 different applications to the tune of 120 pounds of nitrogen across the year. The green is 60 pounds of N each application, 4 applications for a total of 240 pounds of N applied. The blue is 0 N Durana white clover is the blue. After the year's total of production of hay, the blue line, the 0 nitrogen, the clover line, was 88% of the 240 pounds of N. We made the same hay, up to 88% of the same hay as we did with 240 pounds of N. And so you're getting some free nitrogen in the system, and that free nitrogen shows up in terms of more yield on your grass. Okay, what about protein supplement? Durana is gonna be over 25% protein, over 75% digestible. It's like having range cubes scattered out in the field. I mean, it's a high quality forage mixed in and intermingled into your grass. And so every day it's out there in the grazing sward available to graze, they're picking up protein. They're picking up high quality. They're picking up minerals and nutrients that grasses don't have that are in the clover. And so you've got something really high quality that can help reduce some of the costs that you may have invested into licks, tubs, drums, cubes, whatever those things are that you buy. How does that show up in animal performance? We can see improvements as much as 50% or more in animal improvements from having a clover in the grazing. Now, this was grass with 120 pounds of nitrogen. This was grass with 0 commercial nitrogen, but the white clover added to it. What's the difference? We looked at average daily gain in this study. And so the 120 pounds of nitrogen, we had to go buy that nitrogen, we had to apply it to the field, and we got around 1 pound, 0.96, almost a pound average daily gain. But that same grass, 0 purchased nitrogen, had the white clover in there, we had an improvement. Now, in the beginning I said, hey, what about putting less in and getting more out? I saved $84. I didn't buy it. I didn't buy the $84, and I got more animal performance as a result. Almost a ½ pound improvement with less input. See what I'm saying? Can we reduce our cost and at the same time raise our output? That's what we're talking about here. All right? Just a reminder, these clovers are not the cheapest clovers on the market. Okay, I'm going to let you in on that secret real quick. You can find cheaper clover, okay? Overemphasizing seed cost, it sounds just like something a salesman would say, isn't it? Overemphasizing seed cost can lead to poor planting decisions. But let me explain that for you real quick. All right? Here's Regal clover, and here's Durana clover. This is a pretty good ladino clover, okay? And with the grass base, here's Kentucky 31. Average daily gain with grass by itself is a ½ pound in this particular trial. With a good ladino clover, 3/10 improvement. If beef was trading for $1, that's 30 cents more. If beef is trading for $2, that's 60 cents more. 60 cents more with that clover. Hey, I'll take it. That's better. More is better. More is good. Take a look at our clover, Durana. A pound over grass alone. Way more than the ladino clover. Ours does cost a little more, but look at the difference you get. Why is it showing up different from, is there something special about ours in terms of quality or protein or it's making them do this? Well, what's special is this is the 3rd year. White clovers, historically, if you've had experience with white clovers, they don't last very long. 2, 3, 4 years maybe, and then they're gone. And while they're growing, they're eventually caving off. And so even in the 3rd year, I can still see some scattered white clover, yeah, but it's not enough to impact you. So we've got to have something that's more persistent. And when you put the money into a good variety, and it stays there with you the second, the third, the fourth year, you get the benefit of it. We all can stand up here and talk about the benefits of white clover, but if it's not growing in your field, how much benefit do you get? That's the problem. It's got to persist and be durable. So this clover, Durana and Patriot, are persistent. They're durable. They're long-lasting. And so there's a difference there between the two. There's a difference between the Ladina and that, and there's a huge difference. We might even mention something about MaxQ tonight, a non-toxic fescue that we have. There's 3/4 of a pound difference, almost 3/4 of a pound. That's around 22 pounds a month of grazing. Okay? What's 22 pounds of beef worth? What's that trading for? Does anybody know? Well, what's the clover cost? Clover costs around $20 an acre to plant. And in 1 month, we can see the difference. In a number of days, we can see the difference between a common clover and our clover. And so don't get fooled at a price on a seed when you can get something that's long lasting, that lasts for years, that's different. Let me make a bold statement. Adding Durana or Patriot clover to your pasture can reduce the cost of producing a pound of beef on your farm by 50%. Whoa. That's a lot. By 50%. Here's grass with 150 pounds of nitrogen. That's our nitrogen system. Here's the same grass with clover, no nitrogen. That's our clover system. Here's the same grass with no clover, no nitrogen. That's our do-nothing system. Okay? A cow-calf pair needs about 1.1 acres in this particular trial with a nitrogen system. With the clover system, it needed 1.5 acres, a little bit more ground. With the do-nothing system, no nitrogen, no clover, just grass, we needed 2.7 acres. Well, what was our gain per acre? 316 pounds of beef produced in the 150-pound nitrogen system. 307 pounds of beef produced in the clover system. I didn't buy the nitrogen, but I've got the clover in there. 307 pounds of beef produced. What's my cost of production? That's the bottom line. Doesn't really matter how much you make. It's how much it costs you and what you're going to sell it for. Because that's what's in your pocket. That's what you made. The cost of producing that 316 was 58 cents per pound of beef produced. Cost was 58 cents. On the clover system was less than half that, 28 cents. We cut the cost in half. We looked at 3 things, and 3 things only in that trial. Nitrogen savings, the money I saved on nitrogen, the money I saved on protein, and the money I made extra because I had a higher gain from the clover. The same 3 things I've showed you so far, that's what we looked at. Can we cut the cost of producing a pound of beef on your farm? With clover, you can. And you can do it dramatically. And if you've got 10,000 acres and you plant 1 acre of clover mixed in, it's not going to do it. You're not going to see that kind of result. But if you scatter it out across your land and you use it and get some use out of it, you're going to see some serious reduction in your cost, in your input cost. That particular trial, we looked at what the benefit from the clover was. What does it cost you to plant an acre of the white clover? Around $20. The benefit in that specific trial we just looked at was almost $100. It was nearly $100 per acre per year. It cost you $20 one time to plant. What's so special about these clovers? Well, this right here is a stolen. Chad has a bucket over here that you can kind of look at, and inside that bucket are stolens. And these guys, these are little runners, okay? And they have little roots coming down. And so as you see these little joints on it, that's where these roots tap down. Y'all have seen strawberries run. And they run a little ways and they tap down. They run a little ways and they tap down. This just taps down so much more often. And so if roots are here and here and it's got cut right there, it didn't bother anything. It didn't have to have the mama plant back over here. It's got roots on both sides that it just keeps on going. And these stolens tap down as they grow. They continue to grow out these ends. They branch off and they take off that direction. they spread across the top of the pasture. And they colonize in all this open ground in your pasture. And so they're running type plants spreading by runners on top of the ground, tapping down roots, and filling in all the open ground. Normal white clovers have about 52 stolons per square foot. Blue bag, Patriot has 78. Normal has 52. This one has 78. Durana has 97 stolons per square foot. What does that mean? The more stolons per square foot, the higher number of stolons per square foot, the more durable, the more persistent, the more heat tolerant, drought tolerant, cold tolerant, the more grassy, weed tolerant, the more grazing tolerant, the more tough it is on the farm. The reason these last longer, the reason I showed you that 3-year study, and the reason these last longer is because they have a higher stolon density. Ladino types, they're well known for being big, upright, big leaf, tall clover. In the business, we call that sexy to look at, okay? Dutch types, y'all got these in your front yard. You've been mowing them for 150 years. They're little bitty short stuff. They got little blooms on top. They're thick. You know, a cow can't even get on its hands and knees and eat this stuff. It's so short to the ground. And it's choking out everything out there. That's what we call Dutch. And scientists for over 25 years have tried to crossbreed these different things. They come up with an intermediate. And I could probably graph maybe 25 different Ladino clovers on this chart, and USDA will give you another name. Oh, mine's different, just like this, and yeah, okay, that's Regal. Mine's like, okay, that's Osceola. Well, that's Wheel. That's Insight. That's Jumbo. That's Ivory. There's 100 of them. They're all Ladino types. They all have about 52 stolons per square foot, and they all fall short when it comes to persistence and durability. But they're fun to look at for about a year. Dutches, no yield whatsoever, and they crowd out all the grass. We found Durana, the orange bag, we found Durana growing in a pasture on a farm with cattle on it. Imagine that. We didn't mess with that. We said, look at that. That's persistent, that's durable, that's living, it's been here all this time. Let's get it and put it in the bag and sell it to somebody. We call that Durana. We crossed Durana with a Ladino and made the blue bag Patriot. We wanted something a little bit higher yielding than what we had. We got Patriot. We gave up some. Y'all got F1 cattle, I bet. You cross two things, you give up this, you get a little bit of that. We crossed this. We gave up some persistence, but we gained a little yield out of the Patriot, okay? So the toughest thing we have is Durana. Patriot is tough, but just not as tough as Durana. And so we end up, as a company, we sell way more orange bag than we do anything. So I don't know what we'll do here, but my bet, that's probably what we're going to do. Most people say, oh, the toughest one. And so they end up leaving with the Durana. That's some stolons of Durana right there. If you were to shave off all these leaves off of here, and that's exactly what I did with this with a weed eater. I took all the leaves off I could, and all these stolons were exposed. That's the life of the plant. All the energy and the carbohydrates are stored in there. If you totally defoliate it with grazing or what have you, doesn't matter. It's going to just put out a brand new leaf.
I'll just point out that plot right there, we just took it out of our test plots 7 days ago, and it looked like that, but brown. And so that's the regrowth of all that carbohydrate energy stored in the stolons. So that's just, that particular one's been there about a year, so it's had time to set in and be pretty good. But that's about 3 inches of growth, would you say, something like that, off of just the reserves in the plant, sitting it in a warm environment for 7 days.
What keeps a cow from going out in the pasture and eating something like that and being all bloated up about 3 hours later?
Boom! What's that about 4 slides ahead of me right there. Come on up, you can do this part. Yeah, we'll talk about it, but this today doesn't look like this out in the pasture. We had to what? Dig it up 7 days ago, tarp it, put it in a warm environment, tarp it, put it in a greenhouse environment, and make it come out. You wouldn't. That's not normal.
Just flat brown.
Yeah, out here.
Would be, I'm talking next spring when things start growing.
Well, when things start growing, you want that. You want it to start greening up.
Okay.
Wait for 4 more pages.
Yeah, let's get on 4 more. Okay,
Yeah.
I've told you the good. A good honest salesman's going to take the bad and the ugly too. So here comes some of the rest of it. The clover doesn't germinate in the back of your truck headed to the farm, and it's not ready to graze in 7 days. It takes a little while to come up and start growing. It's a true perennial, so it's going to make a root system first. Okay, at the expense of not a lot of top growth. So the first thing is roots. So here's a 6-week-old, here's an 8-week-old. A lot of root system. This root, a lot of root system going out there. Not a lot of top growth. So a lot of people that go out there and plant the clover seed, they have high expectations. And I'm trying to bring you down to reality right now, is to say, look, it's not going to happen overnight. This has to take time to germinate. But there's some things in the playbook that you've got to do between planting and getting it established. You know, you can't let the grass get knee-high and choke out and shade the clover. You've got to be grazing it. You mean you can graze this when it's early? Yeah, you've got to be grazing it. You have to be keeping the sunlight down. Here's 6 months old, so we've got a good root system established. Now we're starting to make some of these runners. Okay, so the second thing after roots is stolons, it's runners. The third thing is top growth. So the second spring, it's going to blow up on you. But the first year, you've got to be patient. Okay? All right? So here was the seed would have been back over here somewhere. And I picked all this up off the ground. I pulled all these little stolons up. And this is out at 28 inches. And all this is connected. These stolons is branched out in every direction. So it will spread in every direction. And the higher the stolon density, the more plant persistence you've got. And that's what Durana. It's the highest stolon density white clover on the market. And the second highest stolon density white clover on the market is called Patriot. These are the 2 toughest white clovers out there. And we believe as a company, you know, we can go get any other white clover we want to now. The company's got a fair amount of money. They can go buy them one. But why have a white clover if it's not going to be there in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years? It's the persistence that matters. You know, something you can depend on down the road, that's what matters. And so that's what we've got with both Durana and Patriot. Let me just demonstrate that for you in this nearly the last slide on the clover. This is a 4-year study, and you're looking at only the 4th year. I'm not showing you first, second, only the 4th year. Okay? Both of these clovers, Ladino and Durana, both of them started at 100% stand. They were both beautiful at one day. But 4 years went by. Heat, drought, grazing tolerance, tall fescue sod. It was in heavily grazed area in tall fescue. And 4 years. And in the 4 years, 100% died back to 17. That's normal for white clover. That's not what we wanted. We wanted something tough and durable. In those same 4 years, I'm not showing you mine is 10% more than theirs. I'm showing you something that took off and thrived in the same environment. Where other clovers die, Durana and Patriot thrive. And that's what's different. I've got to somehow get whatever experience you have about white clover in your mind, I got to get rid of that and say, introduce you to a brand new set of clovers here. Because your daddy's clover and your granddaddy's clover is not this clover. This is different. So we're talking about something that's tough and durable in an area where white clover generally isn't. And so get ready for that. Frost seeding. This is something we can do with these clovers. Perfect for frost seeding. 768,000 seeds in every pound. Little bitty seeds make it easier to frost seed. They'll bounce and they'll jiggle and they'll fall down in these little cracks and crevices. And that's perfect. When that sun comes out the next day and everything melts back, it's planted. The work is done, so we don't have to have a lot of specialized equipment to do it. So soil testing's good. Amend where needed. We're fixing to plant a crop. We want to make sure we've got our soil right. Review the chemicals. Now, this is a broadleaf weed to most chemicals that are broadleaf killers. So the chemical doesn't know the difference, so you better. So if you sprayed down a chemical history there, know what it was and make sure you don't have the residue. Graze the pasture down tight. When we're trying to get white clover established, there's one simple rule. Grass is the enemy. Bold print. Grass is the enemy. The more you hate on the grass by grazing it hard, the better environment you've created for the clover. If you really help your grass and do everything in the world in the grass, the clover is going to suffer as a result of it. You're going to make it tougher on the clover. So graze it down tight. You can plant fall, winter, or spring. If you use a drill, this clover's little bitty. Don't dare punch it into the ground. You'll get it too deep. Well, I can set my drill. Well, yeah, I've never seen that drill. You're going to get it too deep. Pull the tubes on it. Scar the ground up all you want and let the seed fall on top. Okay? Let the press wheel mash it in. It won't get too deep. Broadcast the seeds fine, scratch it in, roll it in, trot it in, use the frost to get it in. Any kind of way is fine. We typically have about a 3-pound seeding rate. The bag is 25 pounds, so 8 acres at 3 pounds is 24 pounds of seed. And so that'll cover 8 acres plus a little bit more, another third. If you're really in a tough environment, you really hadn't done a good job to prep up, you're not using the best equipment in the world, you're just going to try to make it work, you might push it up to 4 pounds of seed. But 3 pounds is still, that's 1.5 million pounds of coated seed is 3 pounds, so that should be plenty and, on an acre. What about native grass? Fall plant. If you fall plant, there's no burn in the spring. If you've done the right job to prepare the ground in the fall to plant properly, there's nothing to burn in the spring. Okay, so we don't want to burn up our little guys. Let the native go dormant. Graze it tight, get it down short, and then get the seed out there. All right. What about spring? You can come out here and burn earlier than what you're going to do, and then get the seed out there, frost seed method, on top of that black. And then spring with no burn, you're going to have to go out there and just grub that old brown dead, just grub it down tight, get it short, and then seed it. But all these come spring, when something starts greening back up, we need to be on it grazing it. We need to be on it. Don't let the grass grow tall and smother up underneath it. Okay? So what about bloat? There you go. How many slides was that? Was it 4 or 5?
Maybe 5.
It was about 5. There you go, Chad. Maybe. Okay, so what about bloat? Number 1, never turn your cows on anything that lush and green when they've been hungry all winter long. Amen, brother. So we've got to stuff them up. If we're bringing them over to something that flashy, I don't care if the name of it's wheat or white clover, we got to stuff them up with some hay and get them good and fed up and keep some free choice hay. And number 2, we don't want to turn them out there with a wet leaf surface. For some reason, that'll make them bloat faster. Wait up until the middle part of the day until the leaf surface is dried up. Number 3. You can get yourself some free choice bloat guard mineral or block, some surfactant type chemical to help reduce that bloating issue, because white clover can bloat. And I'd say number 4 is watch. Even taking all the precautions, you still ought to use your eyes. Stand at the fence and watch them as they get out there. When you're looking at the animal, it's on your right side. Their left will bloat first, and that's kind of how you're going to see the first sign. You can do something about it right then. If they get all bloated up, it's hard to do something about it then. But oftentimes, if we've got a group of 50 and we see one of them bloating, we'll get her out and leave the others until you see some more signs. If you see multiple, get them all out. But oftentimes we can have an old chronic bloater and the rest of them are fine. We want to make money on the other 49 and get the one old headache out of there. And but that's a common thing. But I can tell you here, how many of y'all drove to get here today? Nobody? 1 or 2 of them? How many of y'all ran the heat in the truck? Most everybody. Okay. You could have walked. You'd have never had a car accident walking. Never had one walking. But driving was more efficient. It was more comfortable, faster, those kind of things. And bloating, it's a reality when it comes to white clover or anything. But just like when you drove here, you was on your side of the road. As it was getting dark, you hit the lights. When you turned the corner, you might have even used a blinker. There were some rules that you followed, and I've gave you those rules. Okay, I'm gonna tell you this. You know, if bloat is holding you back, if bloat's holding you back, it'll be cold and a long walk. Okay, if bloat's holding you back, so don't let that bother you. I tried it back in '88. Here's a common thing I hear. You know, white clover's changed over the years. We got a new sheriff in town, and one of them's called Durana and one of them's called Patriot. You ought to give them a try. Unrealistic expectations. I've explained it's not going to come up in the back of your truck on the way to the farm. You won't be grazing it when you unload the bag. So have some realistic expectations around it. And what about a weed spray program? Anybody held up on that? Certainly we can have weeds in our pasture. What you ought to do is control the weeds first, then have that secondary plan to go out and sow the clover. A lot of our weeds will come up and grow in these gaps. We spray and kill them, we got an empty gap. Next season, here comes a weed growing in that gap. We got to go spray it. And these guys down in Texas, they're on a chronic, you know, some people hand down the farm and the inheritance and this stuff. In Texas, their inheritance is the weed spray program from their father and their grandfather. They've got to break the cycle. And the cool thing about these clovers is once they get in there and start filling in the gaps, they will fill in the gap where the weed wants to grow. And once you shade the ground with clover, no sunlight can get to the weeds. So you can stop that you know, that old plan of always having to do the weed spray program. So that's a good deal. And don't know if you're into wildlife, but deer love the Durana and Patriot clover, and so it's great for other recreational purposes too. Any questions on that?
I might just mention one thing as far as the bloat problem. Why you put them out on dry grass? That's saliva. That's a natural anti-foamer. So saliva is one of the big things that helps produce that. And if you put them out on wet, well, they're able to consume more because it's already wet. They don't have to produce any saliva, and that's why. The other reason why it's bloating is it's that digestible. You know, that's why it ends up doing that, is that's digesting very fast within inside the room. But you're mixing it with other forages, with other things out there. You do not want to have the pure standard Durana. I mean, that's.
And so we typically say as high as 60% clover. I'm sorry, grass. 40% clover. The 60-40 is really the ideal. Some people say, you know, 35, 65, but 60-40 is ideal. And the reason is 100% clover isn't going to make more nitrogen than a 40% standard clover. Okay, and a 40% standard clover with enough grass, 60% grass, just like when you put out dry hay, you might put out some protein with it to make that go better. And that clover with that grass is going to go better. It's going to make that pound better. So it's the highest average daily gain you can get is a 60-40 combination, 60 grass, 40 clover. The best nitrogen fixation that converts to real forage production is the 60-40. It's the magic number. How do you maintain a 60-40 on your farm? Okay, with this clover, with Durana and Patriot, the more if you've got too much clover, let's say 3 years from now, you've got a great stand and all of a sudden you look out there and it's 50% clover and 50% grass, and you want to bring that back in. Adding a little nitrogen does what to the grass?
Shades the clover.
It makes the grass take off, and that shades the clover, reducing that clover number. That's exactly right. And so how do we get more grass, less clover? Add a little nitrogen is the fastest way. A second way that not many people like is nothing. Walk away from it, don't graze it, and the grass will get tall and shade the clover. Okay, so either one of these. What about the opposite? What if we've got 20% clover and 80% grass, and we want the clover to come back? With these types of white clover, the harder you graze, it equals more clover. Exactly right. Grazing hard punishes grass. It doesn't hurt the white clover. It'll take the tight grazing. And so when you punish that grass, you set it back, here comes the clover back. So those are two easy triggers that you can pull on the farm when management. Add a little nitrogen, makes more grass. Add a little heavy grazing pressure, leave them on there a little bit longer, makes more clover. So that's pretty easy to do.
How long does clover last?
How long does the clover last? You know, how long does Kentucky 31 last? I don't know the answer to it. We do trials. We call them accelerated stand survival trials. In these trials, we put it right next to a ladino clover that we know, in this part of the country lives 3 years. And how long did ours live right next to that one that we know lives 3 years? And in those trials, ours has lasted 3 times longer than these ladino types. And so you might say, well, if ladino lives 3 years, then mine will live 9 years. If ladino lives 4 years on my farm under my management, because your management might be a little different from his management, and might be a little different from your management. So that number can vary, but the answer is 3 times longer is what the university has given us, as a result of those accelerated stand survival trials.
If them tillers put down their own roots each time, I mean, shouldn't that, in theory, just keep going?
Yes. We've seen that, and we've seen some natural reseeding. We've seen a lot of cool stuff that means less clover seed sales the next year, but it's a good clover. It lasts too long, and it's tough. It does.
Like that chewing gum commercial.
I'm telling you what. I'm telling you what. I feel for those guys. You got that right. It's a tough, durable plant, and I was telling our salesman earlier. Dr. Joe Boughton is the research scientist and plant breeder that developed Durana and Patriot. And Joe Boughton is world-renowned, not just U.S., he is world-renowned as a forage breeder and scientist. Not because, and he should be, not because most people are, I'm just a red clover guy, or I'm just an alfalfa guy. Joe Boughton has developed grain rye, wheat, oats, red clover, white clover, alfalfa, orchard grass, switchgrass, maybe that's it. He's done all those. You'll never find anybody that's done more than one, or, oh, I'm a clover guy, I've done white and red. Okay, he's done all these, but what he's well known for isn't that. He's well known for his varieties are what we call farm ready. Most people, when they select a forage variety, I'm going to select mine under grazing. Somebody get me a lawnmower, let me graze it. Or somebody give me some clippers, let me graze it. You know what he gets? Animals. And they pick at it, and they tug on it, and they pee on it, and they poop on it, and they lay down on it, and they do everything an animal would do to it. And he selects the one that survives out of that, and he replants it. His are farm ready. His survive better on the farm as a result of how he develops them. So all these other plant breeders and research scientists give him awards because he's done it that way all through the years. And he's the guy behind these, and he's also the guy behind some other forages that we sell. So they're tough and durable, and they last a long time.
What about hay?
White clovers are not typically what we put in a hay situation by themselves. Now, if they're mixed with grass, they'll tend to dry a little better. But red clover and alfalfa is kind of what we use for hay. You got a pile of white clover by itself, would just clump up and make a mess. Just wouldn't. But mixed with grass can be okay. And if I was going to mix it with grass, I'd use the Patriot, taller plant, bigger leaf, higher yielding than the Durana. In the pasture, under grazing, the orange bag. Got a question right there?
You touched on soil testing. Do these have some pH sensitivity?
Durana is it will grow in a lower pH, and I know we're probably not in that rate, but it'll grow in a lower pH than any other white clover will. But we say anywhere from a 6 to a 7.5-ish is the range.
Pretty high for pasture, isn't it?
Sir?
That's pretty high for pasture, isn't it?
The pH range?
I mean, what most pastures have in this area.
Yeah. But it'll grow in that range, so you wouldn't worry about it until it fell below a 6. Sir?
So
or above a 7.5. Yeah.
Right. Being as wide, its ideal is just about like anything, about 6.8 to 7.2. That's where it likes to be.
But it'll grow below that. But it just won't. What you'll have is, if your soil, if we go south, if we go acidic, your rhizobia bacteria starts to die. Even though I can show you a living clover plant, in a 4.8, oh, it's alive. It's not doing a thing for you. It's not fixing nitrogen because you've killed all your rhizobia in a 4.8. So there's other reasons to adjust your pH down or up, just other than just the plant, can it survive in it? Especially with rhizobia, you've got to keep that alive too. Yep.
If you burn your pasture, how late can you plant this clover?
And then if you burn your pasture and the clovers have been established for 1 year or 2 years, will that still kill it? Would hurt the clover?
It's not going to hurt it after it's established. If you fall plant it and then burn this spring, we got trouble. It's not established, you know. But if it's over a year old, we're in good shape. Had you to burn this, it'd have been fine through that. Those stolons are tight enough to the ground and big enough at some point, you know, a year old, that they're not going to get hot enough to hurt them. And any brown that's above didn't really matter. That the plant didn't need that anyway. It wasn't going to come back from that. It was just that green stolon on the soil. But too young, it's a problem. Now the other part of the question about what if I burn too late and I get out here and plant too late?
Say in May?
Yeah, see we're too late in that it's a cool season perennial. That's what it is. It's a cool season perennial. And so hot, dry, he needs to be established and fully grown before he gets to hot, dry. So every day that you miss after frost seeding is a day it didn't have to grow, and a day it didn't have to get a root, and a day it didn't have to make a runner, and a day it didn't have to store the carbohydrates. And so you're cheating a day off of it. Now, will we have the light summer and not so dry, and you look like a champ as a result of it? Maybe. But if we have the hot, dry, you're going to be in trouble. So I'd say let's get it in a good window of frost seeding to early spring at the latest, and give it more days of growth. Yep.
So listen, it don't reseed from seed then?
It does reseed itself.
It will?
As a secondary way. The plant itself, just like an oak tree, it will be there. And it's going to make acorns. And you can find those acorns germinate and make a little tree. It will do that too. But that oak tree's still there. And that original plant is still there. And so yes, we've seen areas that get really drought stricken and we lose pasture as a result of it. We've seen the clover stand come right back from seed. So it can make seed. And the seed that these two guys make, normal white clovers make about a 50% dormant seed. And so you've heard of scarifying seed, I'm sure, and companies scarify white clover seed one time, and it usually gets it all the way down to 5% dormancy maybe. Ours come off the plant at about a 95 to 98% dormancy. We have to scarify ours twice. And even that, you'll probably find on the bags that maybe 10 to 20% of the seed is still hard and dormant. And so that seed grown in nature, falling on your ground, laying there, could lay there for 10 or 15 or 100 years before it ever breaks dormancy. So that year that it really goes through a tough situation, a drought or whatever, that may cause, like we saw in Texas a few years back when they went through that terrible drought where all the lakes dried up. Same thing happened in Georgia. That amount of drought scratched on that seed enough that summer to break that dormancy. We had solid stands of clover. Good or bad, that's what the reality was. Dare I?
Let's just maybe have a little bit of, we can ask about this. How many of you guys are interested in, he has some slides that talk about fescue and the difference between your normal K31 type fescues and some newer endophyte friendly. Anybody interested in seeing some more on that? We'll kind of talk about fescue toxicity, how to combat that, some other things. Any of you want to say?
About how to get rid of it.
Want to talk about how to get rid of it?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to get rid of it if you can produce with it. So
here's how to get rid of toxic fescue and reestablish a new type of fescue. And fescue, what grows better than fescue?
Weeds.
Maybe a weed. Maybe a weed. And by way of saying, that's probably a compliment to fescue, okay? But I'll try to be quick about it. MaxQ is a new kind of fescue, new in that it's been around for 12 years. So not terribly new, but new in that it's revolutionary. Fescue in general, Kentucky 31, or a fescue that contains a toxic endophyte, causes what we call fescue toxicosis. Some people call that summer slump. Some people call that just all kinds of animal disorders, but poor animal gains, reduced conception rate, heat intolerant, failure to shed their winter coats, elevated body temperature, increased respiration or nervousness, lots of related animal disorders from the toxic endophyte or from Fescue toxicosis. And what is that? Well, endophyte is, endo means inside and phyte means fungus. So endophyte is a fungus that lives inside the plant. We got roses, and we see black spot on the leaf. That's a fungus on the outside of the plant. You can't see endophyte in fescue, not with your eyes looking at the plant. This is a cross section of a leaf, and so you see the cells. You see the cells, and living in between the cells is the squiggly lines. That's endophyte. So it's inside. You can't break the leaf open and see endophyte. It's a fungus that lives inside. Fungus does two primary things. Two important things. Number one, it protects that plant at all costs. This endophyte is going to die if that fescue plant dies. And so it's going to produce all kinds of helpers. It's going to produce a natural insecticide. So when a bug bites that fescue plant, it's told, you're not going to go here. You're not going to feed on me. I've got a natural insecticide systemically working inside of me to protect me. All kinds of benefits to make that plant survive. It's also producing chemicals that cause animal disorders, to keep animals from eating it up and killing the plant. As more of those animals eat it, the toxier it gets, the more poisonous it gets. And so that endophyte is producing all kinds of good things to keep the plant alive, because it's a perfect symbiotic relationship between the endophyte and the plant. Plant dies, endophyte dies. And so we've seen how important this is. This is Missouri, okay? In the state of Missouri right now, the second year, they have formed an alliance for grassland renewal. This is a partnership between university, between NRCS and USDA government, between companies, private companies like ourselves, and you, the end user or the cattleman or the people with the fescue. It's such a problem, endophyte toxicosis, and the money that costs you out of your pocket in your cattle operation is such a problem that in the state of Missouri, they're working to educate producers and to make monies available, around $200 an acre available to kill toxic fescue and reestablish MaxQ or other non-endophyte, non-toxic endophyte tall fescues. And so it's a big deal. It's costing a lot of money. Over $500 million a year is what it costs us out of our pockets if you're a cattleman raising animals on tall fescue. You're giving up $500 million a year collectively. Billion with a B. Okay? And so toxic fescue produces bad things. Animal health is poor, but man, it is tough and durable and very persistent. Y'all have heard of endophyte free? Endophyte free came along. We took the endophyte completely out of the plant. Drive around for a week out here this week, without any antifreeze in your pickup truck and see how far you get. We took the antifreeze out of the guy, and we didn't get very far. The plant caved in the field. It didn't persist. It died. So now we've got something called MaxQ. We've reintroduced the endophyte back into the plant, okay, to give it the tough and durability that it needed. But these new endophytes that we have do not produce animal toxins. They do not produce the disorders that are associated with fescue toxicosis. They give the plant the toughness, and they show us fantastic animal performance. So we've got two flavors, MaxQ and MaxQ2. MaxQ2 has been the tougher of the two. It's a Noble Foundation, Ardmore, Oklahoma. It's a Noble Foundation variety. It grew up on the western edge of where fescue can grow. You are on the western edge of where fescue can grow. And so it's probably going to be the variety of choice for you. Just some quick 2 or 3 slides. Stocker gains, if you're interested in putting weight on, Kentucky 31, this was a spring phase. You can see the detail, March to July, 113 days of grazing. Start weight 450, put them to 560. That's 113 pounds of total gain. The average daily gain across those days with toxic fescue was 1 pound. Average daily gain. The comparison with MaxQ on the same flavor, the same area, the same type animals, same days, same number, same pretty as near as you can get, start weight and finish weight, over 2 pounds. That's 1 more pound every day on every head you graze. On 5 weights, that's $2 more every day you graze. Y'all heard of wheat or grain rye? Same trial. Couldn't graze it as many days because it's not growing as many days. 1.86. So we did as good as, and technically a little bit better than wheat. There's no toxin in wheat. There's no toxin in MaxQ. There's a toxin there. The digestibility of tall fescue is the same, doesn't matter the flavor. It's the toxin in it that causes your problems. Okay? Toxin in it that causes the problems. Here was a study. I've already showed you the grazing days. Conception rates. All right, Kentucky 31, 60% bred. MaxQ, 90% bred. So we can get better conception rates. We know that toxic fescue, hot fescue, causes poor animal performance, and that shows up in conception rates. Cows, condition score. We separated 2 sets of cows with calves, kept the calves on their side. The cow's body condition score of the 2 sets was around a 5 when we started. At mating, at weaning, the condition score of the MaxQ in the red came up 1 whole condition score, a little bit more than that, but 1 whole condition score. What's that mean to us? What's a better condition score in our cows mean? They're going to breed back better, they're better healthy, they're going to raise a better calf, a lot of things. Toxic Kentucky 31, these are the steer calves, heifer calves that came off those mamas. The steer calves gained 62 more pounds that were on MaxQ compared to the steer calves on the toxic fescue. The heifer calves gained 44 more pounds than the same heifer calves on the toxic fescue. So there's a huge upside to getting rid of the toxic and getting into the MaxQ. And so here's grass with just nitrogen, grass with clover, toxic fescue or MaxQ, toxic fescue or MaxQ. Here's Durana clover. Just show you the average daily gain of the gain per acre, however you look at it. 1.5 average daily gain of just toxic fescue compared to 2 pounds with MaxQ. That's a ½ pound improvement with MaxQ every day they graze in this particular study. That's 66 more pounds of beef per acre comparing the 2. If you add clover, which is one of the things we talked about today, you say, well, I'm not interested in this new type fescue. I'm just going to dilute it with this newfangled clover you got. That's not a bad idea. Toxic fescue with Durana clover, you've helped yourself 1/4 pound up to 0.78 from 0.48. You've helped yourself better than 1/4 pound just by diluting it. Look at the gain per acre though, from 1.9 to 305. Okay, so we can put more out there. It's going to be producing more, and they're growing better. So we've helped ourselves. But look at the MaxQ. 2 pounds, 1.78. Even grass by itself, MaxQ by itself is better in average daily gain than the clover mixed with the toxic fescue. But what I call the rocket fuel, the best you can do is the whole program, is to have the MaxQ, have the Durana clover, 2.6 pounds average daily gain. Almost 400 pounds of beef per acre. That's the best. And so we're here talking about clover tonight, but why not mention, if you want to get it perfect, the most economical system, the cheapest way to produce a pound of beef is to grow a grass and a clover together that has the most growing days of anything else you can grow, that has the highest potential for gain than anything else you can grow, and most importantly is the lowest cost. With a tall fescue clover system, that's a pretty inexpensive system. The clover's making all of the nitrogen that the fescue needs. Fescue only needs about 150 pounds of nitrogen a year. Clover's doing that. So it's a good system. So Chad said mention that to you. So boom, there it is. All right. So a lot of benefits, and these are proven benefits. This MaxQ, there's been $25 million spent on it before we ever sold the first pound of seed. So it's got a lot of research on it. We really dulled it down to give you just a few slides today. So any comments or questions on that? Or the two related?
Are you establishing MaxQ?
So got a lot of brochures available, and for example, the question is how do you establish the MaxQ? Number one, there's a MaxQ brochure up here that has a tech sheet right in the back of it, management and establishment. Well, I've got toxic fescue and I want to get rid of it. There's a plan A or plan B on the front here, separated on this. And I like plan B the best. It's the most inexpensive and the fastest way to convert a pasture. And plan B says you've got Kentucky 31 this spring, graze it. Don't let it go to seed. So we need to clip. You can't just graze the seed out off of it. You got to clip it mechanically, and then soon after that it's going to go to seed again. You clip it again. So a clip, and then graze it. Use it. And then 6 weeks before you want to plant MaxQ, you want to spray 1.5 quarts of glyphosate type product Roundup. Kill that, and then the day before or 6 weeks later, spray it again. And that kills all the escapes, and it kills all the cheat and everything else that wants to come up there. And then you drop in there and plant your MaxQ, and you're grazing on it the next spring. A lot of good stuff.
What about the seed that's been dropping on the ground for the last 20 years?
Yep, or 100 years, yeah. So the seed, that's a fantastic question. What about the Kentucky 31 seed that's laying viable in the ground? Okay? This spring we had to clip. We didn't want any seed to fall. And why is that? Because 2-year-old seed that fell in 12, okay? Seed that fell in 11, 10. That's been in the soil 2 summers. By the time fall gets here, it's been in the ground 2 summers. That seed is endophyte-free. That sun has killed the endophyte. Now, it still may germinate and grow an endophyte-free fescue plant, but it won't be toxic. And because of that, but we know that this spring seed crop, if it falls down and germinates in the fall, it'll be toxic. So clip. You got to control that seed head. So we've spent a bunch of our money so we can just tell you how to do it. You don't have to get the knot on the head. We got plenty of.
I wish you could tell us how to get it out of native pasture.
Yeah.
Without killing the native pasture. I got
Well,
pasture.
actually,
That's a chemical
that would be
ban
pretty easy.
conversation.
That would be a February spray with Roundup. So
What?
here in the next month or so, because your fescue grass is a cool season grass, it'll perk up here immediately coming into season here. So you'll see in February we'll have some nice warm days. You can hit your entire pasture, part, whatever, with glyphosate. Those warm season perennial grasses that you have that are your native will be completely dormant. They're not going to be affected by the glyphosate. So that's the easiest thing to do. Similar to like you see those guys out in the golf courses spraying their fairways, you know, all that warm season zoysia, any of that you can selectively control real easy. Where it gets difficult is where you have brome fescue or something like that, where it's 2 cool season plants with no difference in their growing season. There's no dormancy difference. It's very hard to select. But warm season and cool season, easy. Wait till one's dormant. Get the other one. So that'll be February. If you get past February into March, you're starting to get a little dangerous. You get into after March and go all the way into April, it's too dangerous. I wouldn't do it. So you just have to find you a nice sunny day in February or early March. Easy to take care of. So, with that, let's give our guest speaker here a round of applause. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come out today. I think that it's always good for people to get together and learn about some new technologies that are being grown out there and some new things that may be available to you that you may not be aware of. A lot of this is not a new system. This is just a new way to do an old system. You know, for years people have planted clover in our cool seasons or our warm seasons because of that benefit of nitrogen. So this is just a way to make that a little more efficient, a way to make that a little more persistent. It's not anything new, it's just a new variety that really makes that work for you. So tonight, thanks for coming out, and so I put together an order sheet for a deal tonight if anybody's interested in purchasing white clover. We've got $20 off a big bag tonight that will save you tonight. And we've also got some, I think it's about $5 off a small 5-pound bag, a little over an acre's worth for a lot of people to try. I'm in that category where I bought 1 bag of, actually I think I bought Patriot because that's what I had at the time, and we're trying out some frost seed in some areas. And I think that's how I recommend we all do this, is you just get out there, plant some, try some, get used to managing it first, and then see where you're at before you just open the gate and see a whole new method. But I think you'll find that given a little investment and given a little time, you'll start to see some of these returns, and we could all do more with what we have rather than, because there's one thing we're not getting more of, and that's pasture land out here. There's one thing we're not going to find more of is more acres. They're just not out there anymore, and we're going to have to do more with less, more with less, more with less. And so we're just trying to find some ways to do that. So we'll have the guys pass this around, so $20 off tonight. So if you want to, you're just going to mark the quantity that you want and your information here and leave this sheet with me or Justin or Luke. So just fill out that top sheet there of anything you want, and then you can get that deal. Otherwise, you can take your copy home, which is just a stapled one here, and then if this isn't the time for you, or you want to do it later, hey, I want to come back and I want to do it this fall, there's at least a $10 off a bag coupon there for you if that applies to you. And then lastly, I just put a little thank you coupon down there just to give you some off on tubs. I know some of you guys do that, some of you guys do whatever, but Purina does have a new AccuRation tub out there, so I gave you a pretty good deal on that, putting them out at cost for it. So if there's any other questions, anybody got any questions before we go? But anyway, thank you for coming out, appreciate it, and just, if you want, top copy goes with one of us, and make sure your name's at the bottom, otherwise we won't know who got what or who wants what. And we can just go from there, and if you have any other questions, please seek even Justin's been drilled on it here this last week, kind of learning about some new stuff. So if you got any questions and want to just seek us out individually, that's perfectly fine. So just, I'll give you some time to mill around. We of course got, I encourage you to come up here and look at the stolen density. We talked about that in this particular little plot here. Come up, check those out. And you'll see some other handouts and some stuff there. So if you guys need pins, go ahead and drop those out for you. But other than that, thank you. Appreciate it very much. Thanks, guys.
Brown is that side of there.
Now to get some water.